On Friday, George H.W. Bush passed away in his home in Texas with his children at his side. The 94-year-old former president received sweeping praise from those on both sides of the aisle, while both the Obamas and Clintons nostalgically remembered their interactions and stories of the former president. And, I know every once in a while y'all might like for us to do something nice and easy. It's just one thing. We don't ever do nothing nice and easy. Do it nice and rough.
Oh, goodness.
So we're not going to be doing that sweeping praise. We're going to have a real talk about George H.W. Bush.
You know what? When he died, I was reading, stuff about him, and there's this really interesting thing, which is he's so boring. He was a boring, bad president. He wasn't even that good at ignoring AIDS. Reagan was way better at it. He's the Mac Daddy of ignoring AIDS. Nancy Reagan, she's like, I can't talk about AIDS. It doesn't match the China.
Let's literally just jump right into that. Bush was a president notorious for ignoring the AIDS crisis. Literally every AIDS activist group during the time was pissed off at him, had ads from ACT UP that called him a serial killer for ignoring how many men and women were dying of this disease. And on the heels of the crisis in the 80s, he inherited Reagan's sort of penchant for ignoring everything that happened. And later, he eventually did sort of sign the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Ryan White Care Act, which protected people with HIV from discrimination and funded treatment for people with AIDS. But by that point, it was 10 years into the epidemic. 150,000 cases of people with HIV had been reported in the U.S., and 100,000 people had died. So,
thanks a lot,
thanks.
Buddy. Yeah.
Good try.
And there's been sort of this thing that happened with Reagan, that happened with McCain, which we talked about on this show, of people sort of mad at you for bringing up any of this at all.
And just all people are doing, I will say, is stating what he did. They're just saying, these are the things that happened while this person was president. If they sound bad, that is not the fault of the facts. That is the fault of the person who did them. And the notion that simply saying he ignored the AIDS crisis and hundreds of thousands of people died. It just saying that he ramped up this fucking bullshit war on drugs and thousands of people ended up in prison for no reason because of him. That's just saying shit that he did. If it's bad, it's his fault. It's not my fault. It's not anyone's fault that he did bad things.
Also, the reason why we have problems like Trump, the real reason, not, because of the working class and the forgotten man, it is because America has this penchant for ignoring history so much. And I think that is what so much of our art that is about the AIDS epidemic is about. It's about people being reminded of the fact that this even happened. When I was in London, I saw this new play, The Inheritance, which is about the AIDS crisis and about how people in Manhattan, gays in this age, are learning about it. And just sort of how if you forget that history, it's going to be gone forever. And so when you have people saying, don't bring this up, it just adds to the fact that we're going to be forgetting about it if we don't bring it up.
And by the way, we are the ones who have to keep passing it on to each other. It doesn't feel like it's formally embedded in
it's not in history books.
You know what I'm saying?
They only talk about this shit on the news when someone who ignored it died.
Right.
So what else can we talk about?
It's also this weird notion that the people that, and it's frankly usually white people, who were like, he's dead now. We can admit that he did some bad things, but he also did some good things. No, because I don't know, man. You said you're out here saying we need more prisons. We don't need more prisons. We've never needed more prisons. And so people that were negatively affected by that, the notion that they should just be like, well, he had some good moments. It's just, to me, it's the privilege of being able to look at a situation that way and see both sides, because the other side of it is not actively harming you.
It's because you were not caring for, gay men
Your
who
friends
died.
weren't dying of AIDS. Your
You didn't
relatives
have
weren't getting locked
black
up
people
for
incarcerated.
being incarcerated for tiny amounts of crack or whatever bullshit. Like, you were not affected by this. So yes, I understand how you could look back at this person and be like, well, he wasn't all bad, but like, if all your friends are dead, then you don't have the luxury of being able to look at a situation.
You
like that.
also have the fact that he kicked off his presidential campaign in 1988 with that infamous Willie Horton ad because he was going against Michael Dukakis. And basically the ad was talking about Horton, who had been in prison serving a life sentence for murder. And on a weekend furlough program, he murdered a man and raped a woman. And the ad was very clear with a mugshot letting you know that Horton was black and his victims were white. And it was just sort of like, this is Dukakis' fault, ignoring the fact that the weekend furlough program was created by a Republican. It was also popular in California under Reagan. This was really just an ad to get white people whipped up about black criminals coming to rape and murder them. And he went from that to starting his racist war on drugs where, you know, there was that time where he was in the Oval Office and he held up a crack cocaine bag and was like, they're even selling crack outside the White House. And then it was found out that he scammed that entire thing and they lured a drug dealer to outside the White House so that they could perpetuate that scam on TV.
If you can read that Washington Post story, you absolutely should. It was a story in the Washington Post that breaks down the scam exactly of how they lured a drug dealer basically to the White House and to sort of do this whole facade that they're selling crack right outside the White House.
Washington Post, speaking of Spotlight. No, wait, that was the Boston Globe.
No, that was, Spotlight.
Washington
That
Post
the
was
Post,
the
yes.
Post.
Yes.
Yes, Meryl Streep caftan.
Yes.
Yes, that's a 1989 article by Michael Isikoff. We'll provide it in the episode link for people to be able to read it. But that was literally, he was a scammer. And he was a racist scammer too. And the only difference is it was, you know, elegant dynasty scamming instead of Trump's Roseanne trailer park scam.
Right. There was a time when you could be a bad president in a cute, folksy way, which was reassuring to people at the time.
I think the other thing that really bothers me is this idea of, like, you can't speak ill of the dead, which clearly didn't apply to Michael Brown, didn't apply to Trayvon Martin, certainly doesn't apply all the time. Anytime, a black person is murdered by the cops, and they're like, oh, but he smoked weed once. So this bullshit that we can't speak ill of the dead, go fuck yourself, because you speak ill of people all of the time when they're gone, and the notion that someone who was actually harming people, who was actually making people's lives worse, now that they're gone, people can't say what they think of them is ridiculous.
And also, I think in addition to that, there's a general discomfort with just saying about white authority figures, this person mostly fucking sucked, and not paying them respect. Like, if we don't pay them respect, we are, I don't know, it's not civil enough.
Or you're not respecting the institution. I
Yeah,
think that's
right.
what they think they're doing is like, well, he was a president, and I respect the institution of the presidency, and so I have to give him respect. And it's like, no, you don't. Absolutely not. You have someone in power right now who clearly proves that you don't have to do that.
There's also a direct line from Bush ignoring the AIDS epidemic and also his racist war on drugs, because now you look in the future, that intersection of him attacking gay people and him attacking black people is like, you look at HIV right now and it is still a serious problem. It's like there's a lifetime risk of 1 in 99 Americans getting it and 1 in 11 white, gay, and bisexual men. But it's like 1 in 2 African American gay and bisexual men will get that in their lifetime. And we don't talk about HIV and AIDS in this country the way that we should, and we don't have the progress that we should because we spent 10 years not doing anything about it while people were dying. And, it's this problem of whitewashing history, and it ends up whitewashing AIDS in general because, you end up thinking, oh, this is only a disease that affected white gay men. Mm-hmm. Like when that first CDC report came out in the 80s, it included 5 cases of white gay men who got it, and it excluded the 2 black gay men who'd got it. And there was even a report earlier this year, I think, and HIV Plus magazine about how, like, in 1969, the first victim of HIV was actually like a 15-year-old black teenager. So it's like when we don't discuss these things, when we decide that we need to be nice and that we need to, just like keep the peace, that is how people end up dying.
And by the way, someone like him, like the kindler, gentler republicanism, these people specifically found space and created space for like horrible, insane ideologues. And that's who's our president now.
Also, his last tweet was to what's her name? Susan Collins. Was that the one? Like, congratulating her on her vote for Kavanaugh. Like, fuck you. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Fuck you.
I was about to be like...
Congratulating her on confirming a probable racist to the Supreme Court, a probable rapist to the Supreme Court. That's your last tweet. That is the last thing that you or whoever operates your Twitter feed chose to put up there. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Give me
Jeb.
a break. Yeah, Jeb.
That's the only thing he lets Jeb do. He sends out the official tweets. Jeb's going to fuck up next week and send out a tweet, and they're going to be like, wait a second, isn't he dead?
Right.
Jeb is going to just unleash his real feelings about the love he never got.
By the way, do you know what I thought
feed.
was also telling is the minute he died, how quickly Dana Carvey trended, because truly the most, culturally relevant thing about him was just that impression of him. You know what I mean?
And, well, that also goes to the credence that, like, so many people who I know were trying to hop on social media and be like, let's not speak ill of the dead. Let's not do this and that. I'm like, bitch, you don't even remember George H.W. Bush being president.
Yeah, no, please.
I don't.
No, he raised more of a stink about broccoli than AIDS. That's all I remember.
Also, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what we're talking about.
He doesn't.
Right.
The only good thing he did was when he was petty and skipped Trump's inauguration.
That was good.
Pretending he was too sick to travel. And then didn't he go to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, like,
3 Doors Down made it.
I
My
can't
God.
believe they're letting him go
Trump to the
his funeral.
funeral.
Letting Trump go to the funeral. I saw a headline that was like, Trump will attend the funeral, but he won't give a eulogy, which no shit. Like, did anyone actually think he was going to give a eulogy?
Write a poem? Yeah.
Right.
He can barely speak coherently when he asks for his McDonald's order in the morning. You think he's going to sit up there and give a eulogy? I guess basically it's like, don't forget the AIDS crisis. Don't forget the racist war on drugs. And we should be talking about these things more than, just when these people die.
Yeah, and also you can use the opportunity of like, this person is gone and these are now the things we're talking about. That's how the news works. Like I don't know why everyone is surprised every time this happens. Like, why are we talking about these things? Because he's dead and now we're talking about what he did. This is what happens literally every single time.
Yeah. And speaking as a gay black man, if I can have a Kara moment,
Mm-hmm.
I know that we always talk about the normal heart. We always talk about Angels in America, the Baltimore Waltz by Paula Vogel, which I love. But, we should do more to read about the AIDS crisis from the people actually majority afflicted by it, which were black people. I think that people should read Not Straight, Not White, Black Gay Men, From the March on Washington to the AIDS Crisis by Kevin Mumford. And a friend of mine online, Donna Smith, is an HIV-positive poet who has a lot of poetry that I think people should read.
And people around the globe.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just, this fucked up a lot of things for a lot of people, guys.
Yeah. George Bush.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, girl.